The Curse of House Atreus. Before kings murdered their children, before queens bathed returning husbands in blood, before brothers devoured one another for power, there was a curse. And like most curses in Greek mythology, it did not begin with magic. It began with violence. The story of House Atreus is not simply one tragedy, but generations of them stacked atop one another like bodies in a tomb. Fathers passing ruin to sons as faithfully as they passed crowns. Because in Greek mythology, families do not only inherit wealth and names, sometimes they inherit punishment. The bloodline begins with Tantalus, favored by the gods, invited to dine among them on Olympus itself, and, like many mortals granted proximity to divinity, Tantalus made the mistake of believing favor made him untouchable. There are several versions of his crime. In some, he steals ambrosia from the gods. In others, he reveals divine secrets to mortals. But the most horrifying version, the one mythology remembers best, is this. Tantalus murders his own son, Pelops. He cuts the boy apart, cooks the flesh, and serves him to the gods during a feast to test whether they truly possess divine knowledge. The Olympians realize the deception instantly. All except Demeter, distracted by grief over the loss of Persephone, who unknowingly eats part of the child's shoulder. Greek mythology rarely invents horror for shock alone. It uses horror to reveal arrogance. Tantalus believes himself clever enough to mock the gods. Instead, he becomes the first link in a chain of suffering that poisons generations. The gods resurrect Pelops, replacing the missing shoulder with ivory, and condemn Tantalus eternally to the underworld. There, he stands forever in water he cannot drink, beneath fruit he cannot reach. Eternal hunger, eternal thirst, the origin of the word tantalize. But punishment does not end with him, because curses in Greek mythology spread like cracks through stone. Pelops survives, but survival in these myths rarely mean healing. As an adult, Pelops seeks to marry the princess Hypodamia. As an adult, Pelops seeks to marry the princess Hippodamia. To win her hand, he must defeat her father, King Oenomaus, in a chariot race. And Oenomaus kills every suitor who loses. So, Pelops cheats. With the help of the king's servant, Myrtilus, Pelops sabotages the chariot, causing Oenomaus to crash and die violently. And then, once victory is secured, Pelops murders Myrtilus too. Another betrayal, another broken oath, another curse spoken with dying breath. Myrtilus cursed Pelops and all his descendants before he dies, and the house of Atreus begins rotting from within. Pelops fathers two sons, Atreus and Thyestes. And if Greek mythology teaches anything consistently, it is this. Children often inherit the violence they witness. The brothers become consumed by rivalry over the throne of Mycenae. Betrayal escalates into revenge, so grotesque it feels almost impossible to comprehend. Thyestes seduces Atreus' wife and steals a golden ram tied to the kingship of Mycenae. So Atreus decides vengeance must be unforgettable. He invites Thyestes to feast under the false promise of reconciliation, and there, Atreus serves his brother the flesh of his own sons. Only after the meal does he reveal the truth. Some myths linger on the image of tiny hands and feet displayed before Thyestes in horror. Greek mythology understands that revenge rarely restores dignity. It only creates new monsters. The curse deepens. Thyestes eventually fathers another son, Aegisthus, through an incestuous union orchestrated by prophecy and revenge. That child grows up destined to destroy Atreus' line from within, and still the violence continues. Because curses are not storms in Greek mythology, they are habits. Then comes Agamemnon, son of Atreus and future king of Mycenae, the man most people recognize from the Trojan War. Before the Greek fleet can sail for Troy, the winds die completely. The goddess Artemis demands payment. Agamemnon must sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia. And there, the curse reveals its cruelest truth. Violence becomes easier each generation. Agamemnon chooses ambition over fatherhood. He lures Iphigenia to Aulis under the lie that she will marry Achilles. Instead, she is led to an altar. Some versions say Artemis saves her at the last moment. Others let the knife fall. Either way, something inside the family breaks permanently. While Agamemnon wages war at Troy, his wife Clytemnestra waits at home nursing grief sharp enough to become hatred. And when Agamemnon finally returns after 10 years, victorious and arrogant, she murders him in his path beside Aegisthus. Some say she traps him in robes before striking. Some say she hacks at him repeatedly with an axe. All versions agree on one thing: the House of Atreus devours itself completely. Then comes Orestes, the son of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, ordered by Apollo to avenge his father by killing his own mother. And he does. Because by now, the family no longer understands how to survive without bloodshed. Murder answers murder. Grief answers grief. The curse perpetuates itself through people convinced vengeance will finally end their suffering. Instead, it only hands suffering forward. The Furies descend upon Orestes afterward, ancient goddesses of vengeance older than Olympus itself. They pursue him relentlessly for the crime of matricide, screaming through his mind until he nearly collapses beneath guilt and madness. And for the first time in the story, something unexpected happens. The cycle stops. Athena establishes a trial. A jury votes. Mercy narrowly triumphs over endless revenge. It is one of the most important moments in Greek mythology, not because justice is perfect, but because humanity finally attempts something different in retaliation. And perhaps that is why the curse of the House of Atreus still feels disturbingly modern, because beneath the gods and prophecies lies something painfully recognizable. Families passing trauma to their children while calling it destiny, people becoming what wounded them, violence teaching violence until no one remembers where it truly began. The curse was never just supernatural, it lived in every choice the family made afterward. And maybe that is the most terrifying thing Greek mythology ever suggests. Sometimes monsters are not born, sometimes they are inherited.